The night was quiet in the outer zone of Earth's colony base, Delta 4. It was a remote area, surrounded by hills, dry forests, and empty skies. Jack lived alone there, far from the busy cities and spaceports. He liked the silence. But that night, something strange happened. A loud boom echoed in the air. Jack looked up and saw fire streaking across the sky. It wasn't a normal meteor. It was too fast, too bright, and it was heading straight for the woods behind his cabin. Jack grabbed his jacket and flashlight. He ran. Smoke rose from the trees. The crash site glowed with soft blue light. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere. Sparks flew from a broken engine. A small escape pod lay half open in the mud. Jack moved closer, his boots sinking into the wet ground. The pod hissed with steam. It smelled like burned wires and strange chemicals. Then he saw her, a girl, alien, clearly not human, sat curled inside the pod. She was drenched in slime and rainwater, her silver clothes torn. Her skin was smooth and lightly glowing like soft glass. She had long hair the color of deep space, and her eyes were bright gold. She looked up at Jack with confusion and fear. Jack froze. Whoa. Hey. I'm not gonna hurt you. The girl didn't speak. She just shivered. Jack pulled off his backpack. Inside was an old towel he kept for cleaning engine parts. It was dry and a little rough, but it was the only thing he had. Slowly, he stepped forward and handed it to her. Here. You look cold. She stared at the towel like it was made of fire. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted slightly. She didn't move. Then, very slowly, she reached out and touched it. The moment her fingers touched the fabric, something happened. Her skin lit up with glowing blue patterns, lines and marks that moved like they were alive. Her breathing changed. She gasped softly. Jack stepped back. What the hell? The girl looked up at him again, and then, for the first time she spoke, her voice was soft. Musical. You touched my soul. Jack blinked. Huh? The girl looked down at the towel in her hands. She held it like it was a sacred object. Her eyes were full of shock. And something else. Something close to wonder. You gave this to me, she said, still staring at it. Freely. Jack scratched his head. Yeah? It's just a towel. She looked at him with a strange mix of fear and respect. In my world, this is not just a towel. This is an ancient symbol of bond, of choosing. Jack raised his eyebrows. Wait, what? The girl stood now. She was tall, graceful, and soaked from head to toe, but she held the towel tightly. You marked me, she said, and now I belong to you. Jack took a step back. Hold on, I was just trying to help. Her voice lowered. No one offers cloth to a stranger on my planet. Only life mates do. Jack's mouth opened, then closed. He had no idea what to say. They stood in silence as the rain began to fall harder. The escape pod sparked again behind her, starting to smoke. Jack shook his head. Okay, look. Forget the towel thing. You're hurt. You need shelter. My place is not far. Let's get you out of this storm. The girl looked around unsure, then she nodded once. I will follow. Jack led the way back through the wet forest. Trees bent in the wind. Mud pulled at their feet. The girl walked behind him in silence, the towel still wrapped in her arms like a newborn. Jack glanced over his shoulder. Got a name? She hesitated, then answered, Sayla. Jack smiled a little. Nice to meet you, Sayla. I'm Jack. She gave a small nod, her golden eyes watching him closely. She didn't trust him yet, but she had already decided something else. He may have saved her from the storm, but he had no idea what saving her would cost. Jack's cabin was small, made from dark wood and old metal panels. It stood on the edge of the forest, quiet and half buried under the cold rain. Inside it was warm, simple, clean. He opened the door for Sayla. She stepped in slowly, eyes scanning everything like she had entered a holy place. Her wet hair dripped onto the floor. She still clutched the towel, now damp, close to her chest. Jack turned on the heater. "You can sit there. I'll make something hot." Selah didn't move to sit. She stood near the door like she wasn't sure it was allowed. Jack frowned. "You okay?" She spoke softly. "You brought me inside your dwelling?" "Yeah?" "You offered me warmth, shelter, and the cloth." Jack chuckled. "Right. Still thinking about that towel thing?" Selah looked down. "It is not a thing, Jack." She moved closer to the fire, her voice quiet but serious. "In my world, the towel, the offering of cloth, is not random. It is one of the oldest customs of union. We call it tharima, the first touch." Jack raised his eyebrows. "Wait, so giving someone a towel is like a marriage proposal?" Selah looked up at him. "Worse, or deeper, depending on the culture. If accepted, it binds both lives, the one who offers and the one who receives." Jack nearly dropped the cup he was holding. "That's not what I meant." "I know," she said. "But the bond began anyway." Jack sat down, running his hand through his hair. "Okay, let's go over this slowly. You're telling me I gave you something sacred you accepted. Now your people would think we're bonded?" Selah nodded. "Like, romantically?" Another nod. Jack stared at her. "All that because of a towel." She didn't smile. She looked dead serious. "You touched me with intent. I accepted with touch. The code is very old, no one questions it." He leaned back. "Well, that's going to be awkward if your people come looking for you." Selah looked at the floor. "They already are." Outside, the storm raged harder. But inside, the air was filled with quiet tension. Selah finally sat down, curling her legs under her. She still wore the towel like armor. "You didn't mean to claim me," she said. "That is clear. But your gesture still marked me." Jack spoke gently. "Look, I didn't know your customs, I swear. If I broke something sacred, I'm sorry." She looked up. "It's not broken, it's just, now it cannot be undone." Jack didn't reply, because deep down he knew something had shifted. Something in her voice, in her eyes, felt final. Later that night, Jack gave her a blanket and let her rest on the couch. He went into the next room but couldn't sleep. His thoughts spun in circles. Why had she reacted that way? Was it real? Or some misunderstanding? He got up to get water. As he passed the living room, he saw her sitting awake, still holding the towel, watching the stars through the window. She turned her head slowly. "I thought humans were cruel." Jack blinked. "What?" "My people told stories that humans conquer, that humans destroy, but you gave me warmth." Jack said nothing. Selah looked away. "Maybe I needed to be wrong." Outside, in the dark sky above the planet, an invisible ship hovered. Inside, red eyes watched a glowing signal on the screen. Selah's energy mark had activated, and now, the hunters knew exactly where she was. Selah had never known fear, not as a child trained in the royal citadel, not when she defied her elders, not even when she stole the escape pod and flew into forbidden space. But now, sitting in a quiet cabin built by a human she barely knew, wrapped in the towel that changed her life, she felt it, not fear of death. She had faced that. It was fear of something stranger, something gentler, fear of being safe. Jack woke up early, made coffee, and stepped outside. The storm had passed, leaving behind wet ground and clean air. He breathed in the scent of pine and metal. Inside, Selah was awake. She was reading the labels on his tools, touching small machines, learning like a child. But her movements were graceful, controlled. She was no child. Jack knew that now. "You sleep okay?" he asked. Selah nodded. "Your place hums. I listened to it all night." He laughed. "That's the old heater. Makes weird sounds." Selah tilted her head. It reminded me of home. Jack blinked. Really? No, she said flatly. But it made me feel less alone. They worked together that day. Jack let her help fix the water pump. She picked up every technique quickly, almost too quickly. Her mind was sharp. She wasn't just a royal, she was trained for more. I thought princesses didn't do plumbing, Jack joked. Sayla looked at him. I'm not just a princess. He glanced at her. Then what are you? She stood and looked at the sky. I'm the last heir to a broken house, a target, a runner, and now, she added softly, someone who accidentally bonded with a human. Jack didn't know what to say, but something in her voice made him feel protective. That evening, as they ate a simple meal of protein packs and spiced rice, a soft sound interrupted them, a beep. Not from Jack's machines, it came from the towel. Sayla stood up, her face pale. What is it? Jack asked. She flipped the towel open. Small glowing dots blinked along the edge, dots that weren't there before. It's tracking me, she said. It activated when I bonded. The towel has absorbed part of my energy signature. Jack stood. They can trace that? Sayla nodded. Yes, and now? They're coming. Far above Earth's skies, a stealth cruiser moved into position. It bore the symbol of House Darnex, rivals to Sayla's family. They wanted her captured, or erased. Inside, a cold alien voice gave the command. Initiate ground approach. Do not harm the human yet. Back at the cabin, Jack pulled out his old rifle. It was dusty but loaded. You can stay here, he told her. If they come, I'll deal with them. But Sayla shook her head. No, they don't want you. They want me. I should leave before they hurt you. Jack didn't move. That's not how I do things. She looked at him confused. You don't know me. Why risk your life? Jack gave a half smile. Because someone gave me a sacred towel. Guess that means I don't walk away now. Sayla's lips trembled slightly. It was the first time in her life someone chose to stand beside her without command or duty. Just because. Later that night, Sayla sat alone near the window, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She stared at Jack, as he slept on the couch, hand resting near his rifle, for the first time in her life. She was afraid not because she was hunted, but because she didn't want to lose what she had found here. Above them, shadows moved. Ships began to descend. The hunters were coming, but they had no idea. The human wasn't going to let go of her that easily. The wind outside had died. The forest didn't move. The crickets had gone silent. Something was wrong. Jack sat up on the couch. The room was dark. The heater had powered off. No hum, no buzz, nothing. He reached for the flashlight. No light. He tried the wall panel. Dead. He grabbed his old rifle from the corner. The power grid was out. Not from a storm, from someone. In the other room, Sayla was already awake. She stood barefoot, near the window, her skin softly glowing in the moonlight. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from recognition. She could feel them. They're here, she whispered. Jack stepped into the room quietly. How many? Sayla closed her eyes, her voice flat. 3, maybe 4, cloaked, moving fast. Jack nodded. He knew this land better than anyone. He started locking the doors, setting up traps, even powered up the old auto sensors that hadn't run in years. But he wasn't sure it would be enough. These weren't thieves or wild creatures. They were trained, precise, silent killers. 10 minutes later, the first sound came, a sharp click near the back wall. Jack raised his weapon and aimed toward the noise. A shimmer passed near the window, like air bending. Sayla moved first. She kicked the side table, flipping it over, and dove behind it with Jack. The wall burst open with a silent flash. No fire, no smoke, just an energy blast that melted the wood like butter. A masked figure entered through the hole, 7 feet tall, wearing black armor, a glowing blue blade in his hand. He saw Selah and froze. Target located. She is bonded. Proceed with capture. Jack fired first. The bullet hit the attacker in the chest. It bounced off the armor, but pushed him back. Selah grabbed Jack's arm. No guns, you can't win that way. These are Darnek's elite. Jack looked at her. Then how do we fight them? She looked down at her glowing palm. We fight like this. Selah stood tall. Her skin lit up with ancient markings, symbols Jack had never seen before. She pressed her hand to the floor and whispered something in her language. The cabin lights flickered. Energy pulsed through the wood. Jack stumbled as the floor hummed under his feet. The attacker stepped forward, and then screamed. His armor sparked. The blade in his hand cracked. He dropped to one knee. Selah walked toward him, glowing brighter with each step. You dare touch me while I am bonded? The attacker tried to speak, but it was too late. The energy forced him down. His body collapsed. Jack stared at her. What the hell was that? Selah's glow faded as she turned to him, breath shaky. Bonded Othari are not weak. Our emotions fuel our defense. Your kindness gave me strength. Jack blinked. Wait, I powered that? She looked at him. Yes, that towel may have been soft, but it changed everything. Before he could answer, a second blast rocked the front wall. 2 more enemies rushed in, silent, fast, ready. Jack fired again, keeping them back while Selah focused. This time, her glow shifted to red. She moved like light, faster than Jack could follow. One attacker flew backward into the shelves. Another tried to shoot. His blaster melted in his hand. The room shook. Selah didn't just fight back. She became fire. Minutes later, it was over. The attackers were unconscious, bound, or gone. Jack's cabin was half broken, full of burn marks and smoking walls. Jack leaned against the wall, panting. Remind me never to make you mad. Selah looked at him, breathing hard. You gave me something no one ever did. A reason to survive. Jack smiled slightly. Guess I'll never look at towels the same again. But the moment faded as they both turned to the door, because now they both knew more would come, and next time, they might not wait in the dark. Smoke curled through the broken cabin. The floor was scorched. Jack's furniture was half burned. The lights flickered, sparks falling like fireflies from the ceiling. But the real storm was inside her. Selah stood in the center of the room, barefoot, her eyes glowing bright like twin suns. Her body trembled, not from fear or pain, but from overload. Too much power, too much emotion. She hadn't meant to unleash it. But when Jack was in danger, something ancient inside her had woken up. Jack dropped to his knees, coughing. You okay? Selah didn't answer. She stared at her hands, still glowing faintly. This shouldn't have happened. You saved me, he said. I almost destroyed everything. Jack looked around the wreckage. You mean the furniture? She turned sharply. I mean me. What I just did wasn't self-defense. It was bond-fueled rage. Othari are trained to control it. But with you... She paused, her voice shaking. I'm not in control. Jack stepped closer. Then teach me. Help me understand this. Whatever's between us. She looked at him, eyes wide. You don't understand. The bond. It's not symbolic anymore. Selah walked slowly to the center of the room. She touched the side of her neck, where faint blue markings now glowed beneath her skin. I thought this was an accident, she said. A mistake because of the towel. A harmless tradition. She looked up at him. It's not. Jack said nothing. He waited. She continued, voice quiet. When you touched me again, when you stood between me and death, it deepened. The bond fused. Our energies merged. Jack frowned. Fused. Like permanently? Selah nodded. In Othari biology, only a few survive that. If the match isn't true, it destroys both souls slowly. Jack stared. So, we either survive this together, or die? She nodded again. Yes, but I think We're alive for a reason. Outside, the forest crackled with the sounds of retreating ships. The attackers had failed, but Jack knew they'd return, stronger, smarter, and more prepared. He turned to Selah. "We can't stay here," she agreed. "I need to return to my people." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Won't they kill me for bonding with a royal?" "They might," she said calmly. "But if they see the bond for what it is, they'll have to accept it." He crossed his arms. "And if they don't?" Selah stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the heat from her skin. "Then we run. Together." Before they could make a plan, a sharp beep echoed from Jack's old comm unit. A message scrolled across the screen. "Inbound shuttle approaching. Unknown signature. ETA. 3 minutes." Selah's face hardened. "That's not one of mine." Jack grabbed his HFY rifle. "Then let's finish this." But Selah raised her hand. "No. Let me try something else." She knelt and placed her palm on the floor. Her markings pulsed again. A circle of light spread beneath her feet. She whispered ancient words Jack didn't understand, but he felt them. In his chest. In his head. Suddenly, a flash of light passed between them. Jack stumbled back. A mark, faint, glowing, now shimmered just below his collarbone. The same mark on her neck. Selah opened her eyes. "I've shared my seal with you. Now, if they hurt you, the entire Othari code will react." Jack looked down. "That's some heavy insurance." She smiled faintly. "It's not insurance. It's a promise." He smirked. "Remind me. This all started because I handed you a towel?" She nodded. "Yes. And now the stars themselves are watching us." Outside, the shuttle landed with a low rumble. 2 shadows stepped out, armed and cloaked. But this time, Jack didn't hide behind her. He stood beside her. The shuttle door hissed open. Steam spilled out onto the dirt, wrapping the trees in a ghostly fog. 2 tall figures stepped forward. Silver armor, dark visors, the emblem of the Othari royal family on their chests. But they weren't enemies. They were royal enforcers. Selah tensed. "They're from my house." Jack glanced at her. "That's a good thing, right?" She didn't answer, because it wasn't. The taller enforcer stepped forward and removed his helmet. He was older, with sharp eyes and pale, almost white skin. His gaze landed on Selah, then flicked to Jack. "Princess Selah, you broke protocol. You fled an arranged bonding. You hit on a primitive world. And now, you've bonded with an outsider." He said it like an accusation, not a greeting. Selah didn't blink. "I bonded by accident, but I chose to stay. And now I choose to defend him." Jack stood straighter, but the enforcer's eyes narrowed. "You may have forgotten our laws, but they have not forgotten you." He stepped closer to Jack, staring at the glowing seal on his chest. "You carry the Queen's mark." Jack looked down at it. "Didn't ask for it, but I'm not giving it back." The second enforcer finally spoke, voice colder than the first. "You don't understand what that symbol means. That mark makes you a part of the royal line. It means war if mishandled." Jack looked over at Selah. "So, what happens now?" Selah's voice was steady. "We go back. Together. They won't hurt you while I still have a name." The enforcers hesitated, then finally nodded. "We will take you," the older one said. "But know this. When the council sees what's been done, they will decide your fate." Jack smirked. "Let's hope they like towels." The ship lifted into orbit. Jack sat beside Selah in the quiet chamber near the cockpit. The stars outside moved slowly past them, cold and silent. He broke the silence. "So you're a queen now?" She didn't look at him. "Not yet. But with that seal on you, I either become queen, or we both become traitors." Jack leaned his head back. "That's a big leap. From mechanic to royal outlaw." She finally turned to face him. "If I must lose my name to keep you alive, I will." Jack smiled softly. I didn't think towels caused revolutions, Selah whispered. Among my people, love often does. Down below, Earth faded into the distance, and ahead, on the far side of the stars, the Othari throne world waited, a planet of crystal spires, golden skies, and ancient traditions that had never once welcomed an outsider. Soon a human would walk through those golden gates, wearing the Queen's mark. The Othari homeworld was not what Jack expected. From orbit, it looked like a pearl floating in space. White clouds, golden seas, glowing continents marked with silver lines like circuits. But as the shuttle entered the atmosphere, Jack saw the cities. Towering crystal structures stood above green valleys. Floating bridges stretched across the sky. The people didn't walk, they glided. Everything seemed perfect, except the eyes that followed him. Cold, calculating, judging. Inside the grand hall of echoes, hundreds gathered. Nobles, elders, military. Heads and advisors dressed in shimmering robes, their faces unreadable. The air hummed with energy, not excitement, tension. Selah stood beside Jack. Her head held high, but her hands were tight. She wore ceremonial armor laced with ancient symbols. Jack stood beside her in a clean tunic. The Queen's mark on his chest glowed faintly. An elder stepped forward. His voice echoed like thunder across the chamber. Princess Selah, you bring a human, and you claim he is bonded to you. She nodded. Not claimed. Chosen. By offering him your name? No, she said clearly. By accepting his towel. A wave of murmurs rippled through the hall. Another elder, female, sharp-eyed, stood and asked, This human understands our law? Jack stepped forward. I didn't understand it, but I respected it. I gave her a towel when she was cold and hurt. That's all. But I meant it. A soft silence fell. And then, the Queen rose, Selah's mother. She was regal, tall, and radiant. Her voice, however, was ice. Daughter, why him? Selah's reply came without hesitation. Because when I was alone, he did not ask for my name, my bloodline, or my power. He just handed me warmth. He didn't need to understand the bond. He just lived it. She turned and looked at Jack. He gave me a towel, and with it I found something no suitor ever offered me. Choice. The hall was silent. Then slowly the Queen stepped down from her throne. She stood in front of Jack and looked into his eyes. What would you give now, human? She asked. Jack swallowed. Anything she needs. But mostly, I'll just keep offering her the same thing. Comfort, safety, and maybe more towels. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Queen reached up and placed her hand over the glowing mark on his chest. Then so be it. Cheers didn't erupt. There was no music, but the energy in the room shifted, subtly, powerfully. The old laws didn't break, they bent. For the first time in Othari history, a human stood bonded to royalty, not through politics or war, but through a simple, honest act, a gesture of kindness, a towel. Weeks later, on the open balcony of the royal citadel, Jack sat beside Selah as twin suns set in the distance. He watched the sky turn orange and gold, his hand resting in hers. You really meant all that? He asked. She leaned on his shoulder. Every word. I was just being polite, you know. Didn't expect to spark a diplomatic shift. Selah smiled. That's what makes it powerful. She stood, took her royal cloak from her shoulders, and gently wrapped it around him. You offered me warmth, Jack. Now I give you my name. That moment was recorded. It was shared across both worlds, Earth and Othari, and it was remembered not as the day a queen took a mate, but as the day two hearts from different stars proved that real bonds don't begin with power, they begin with a small, quiet kindness.